Great to be back. Welcome, everybody. It's a little bit overwhelming to see the room that full, even people standing in the back, so I hope I won't disappoint you. What do we want to talk about? It's, of course, about eSIM. It's about the value it can bring in the connected world. But let me start with a different thought. Right? In all these customer meetings or partner meetings that we are all having here on MWC, I personally like sometimes to ask the question, what is the common theme? What is it that you're hearing? Is there one technology? Is there one word? And sometimes there's a very clear answer. This year, I got very different answers, or maybe no clear answer. I would be curious to hear your thoughts on this one. But then I thought maybe it is not this one piece of technology. Maybe it's not that one standard. Maybe it's not that one trend that we are seeing. But maybe it's just the fact that a lot of the things we talked about for years are reality now. It's not a promise, it's not a projection, it's not just something that we expect to see in the future, it's things that we see and touch and experience today. So let me talk in this keynote a little about actually the reality, and even looking backwards a little bit, I will come to that point. And of course, we know this is not the place to do a company presentation, and I don't mean to do that. I would just like to say one thing. If you know G+D here on Mobile World Congress, you probably know us well from our connectivity and IoT solutions for our eSIM, right? There's so much more that G+D brings to the table that we can do, because we are active not just in this place, we are also active in the wider sense for digital security, for identities, but also financial platforms and technology for that. And why is this relevant? Because in IoT world, a lot of these things actually come together. A lot of the things are converging. If you're thinking about a mobile payment solution, you need a secure connection, but you also need an identity. You need a secure way of transaction or doing the transaction with values, right? And we have good capabilities in all of that, and happy to discuss this. Again, talking about reality, and we heard that from you, Pablo, and we are going to show a few figures that are hopefully very much in line with what GSMA is talking about. eSIM is here. It's proven, it's mature, it's something that we can see all around us, and hopefully all of you are already using. 1 billion of IoT devices equipped with eSIM already. More than 1.5 billion eSIM-enabled consumer devices out there, right? And of course, in this stage, we maybe have a little bit of a head start on the consumer space towards the industrial or the IoT world. And then it's great to see that so many carriers, and a lot of them are here in this room, have embraced that technology and have deployed it so that we now have the infrastructure to build upon this one as we see. And all of that is, of course, driven by a lot of the benefits that we have discussed at length. It's about the flexibility that we see and experience, and we just heard also on the panel how eSIM can enable and empower different use cases that are very practical. I really like the fact also talking about the digital customer experience. Some years back, we felt there was some kind of resistance also from the telcos, because they were concerned also about churn. Pablo, you just showed also a very interesting chart that showed this has not materialized. Churn is pretty much stable, and it was not affected from the markets where we are seeing where eSIM was introduced and deployed. And that is the reason why we also now feel the telcos, they're embracing also that technology, because it will enable a better digital user experience, and we welcome that for sure. And then together we believe we can drive a very good eSIM adaptation with a very good and attractive cost optimization as well, and of course in a secure manner. Talking about security, we always like to say within G+D, security is part of our DNA. Everything we're doing is security technology, and we have done this for decades, and actually even longer time than that in many different industries. But nowadays, it's also fair to say that eSIM is in our DNA because we moved fast, we moved early. We were active even in that field before we saw some of the standardization taking place, and we were deploying it with our partners and driving innovation in that field, right? So we've been active in 2012 for this one. We've worked with so many of the MNOs that have deployed our solutions. And of course, we are also working closely with the OEMs, the device manufacturers, the automotive world, and that was a key driver and enabler for some of that innovation. And we're very proud, if you're looking at the figures, to say, as we stand here today, 1.1 billion of devices, consumer devices or eSIM devices in general, are running with our embedded operating system. And that gives us the leverage and the experience to talk about the scalability of that technology. But it's also, we're proud that we can say we have now 500 million of eSIMs delivered if we combine all the different use cases. It's consumer, it's M2M, it's also what we're doing in factory personalization. And that, again, shows us actually that this is part of our DNA. However, if these are big numbers, but they're actually maybe still tiny when we are talking about the promises of IoT. We've all heard and seen the statistics. We've seen the billions and billions of devices that are expected then to come to market, and we have to get ready for that. It gives us a good starting point, but for sure we still need to do more and be active in driving that kind of market. Because we believe a lot of these devices will rely on cellular connectivity. There's for sure also other means, and we're working on that one as well, be it satellite or other connectivity technologies, but a lot will rely on cellular. That is still the best use case. And of course, we see the demand for reliability, and of course, it also has to be secure. That is for sure. I'm not going to talk about all the features of new specifications. We like the specifications, we welcome that they are out there, and we believe, of course, that with SGP32, we now see the best of both worlds of consumer and IoT finally coming together and allowing the rollout and deployment of IoT at scale. But of course, there's also critical factors, right? We see sometimes maybe some hindering factors that we still have to sort out altogether in the IoT community and in the ecosystem. We see very heterogeneous markets, and this is not just regional markets, this is also the very different demands when it comes to devices. A car requires very, very different characteristics of the network, of the deployment technology, than maybe an IoT sensor that is out in the field and just consuming a few kilobytes per data over its lifetime. And we have to be ready to serve all of these different demands. And last year, I was up on stage and we were also talking about the challenges. How do we make it work interoperable? How do we make it sure that it's seamless from end to end? And I believe there's great progress also driven by the standardization and the innovation coming from the technology players in this field. And if we do this all right, then we will empower you and will empower the industry to also deploy very innovative business models on top of that one. If we move on, we would maybe like to take a look at some of the learnings, because we believe there's something to leverage from different tech cycles that we have seen, right? And I like to take a look back. We know we started the eSIM transition in 2012. This is moving at a different speed here. I just look at that screen, sorry about that. Let me start here. In the IT world, if you take a look back 10 to 15 years ago, it was by no means a given that we could actually think about moving a lot of our tech stack into the cloud. If you were going to a CIO of a company that relies on IT infrastructure, and some of them, they might look in their own server rooms and it looked maybe in the data centers a little bit messy, but they were still keeping to it. They wanted to be in control of it, in full control, and maybe it was a kind of a big hurdle for them to think about, can we actually do it in a completely different way? Even though it was complex, even though it maybe caused a lot of issues on the CapEx end and on the OpEx side, they had to deal with all of that complexity. They had to deal with also then the kind of security issues. So this was a different place. But the IT world made that transition to a large extent. We see a lot of players that have moved and taken great steps into a fully cloud environment, and that of course enabled a lot of new potential. We see that actually the business models changed. We see that maybe in this case we are talking more about a delivery model as a service, and people are and industries are embracing that. So my challenge here to all of us is, let's maybe take a look back and see what we can learn from that transition that the IT world has already done since quite some time, and how can we apply some of these learnings into the IoT world. And if there's one institution, if there's one company who can talk about how they have done that and what it is that we can learn, it's Amazon Web Services. I would like to welcome our friend and partner AJ from AWS on stage to support me in that. AJ. AJ, maybe you say a few words about yourself and then
Absolutely.
talk about
Thanks, Philip. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Ajay Rane. I lead global business development for the telco business at AWS. It's my pleasure to be here.
AJ, thanks for being up on stage. And as I tried to explain, you have made a lot of experience in moving a lot of the enterprise IT stacks into a cloud environment. And I'm sure it wasn't easy. I'm sure you had to do a lot of convincing to do. But maybe let's talk a little bit about the learnings out of this one, right? So how did you convince actually customers to do that step?
So it's been a long journey for AWS, convincing enterprise customers to move their data centers into the cloud. And in order to achieve that, first we need to look at what are some of the challenges that we can solve for from the enterprise perspective, right? The first challenge is, if you look at enterprise IT infrastructure, there is a life cycle to that, whether you replace it every 3 years or 5 years, and that requires a massive capital investment, and it keeps growing every year. So that's the first challenge, is how can you eliminate the need for CapEx and every year, increasing CapEx every year. Second is prediction, right? Most IT managers and CIOs are not clairvoyant. They don't know how much capacity to build when you're building a data center. So again, you would, in many cases, overbuild because you don't know how much capacity you need. The third one is, when you're moving workloads, you need to make sure that they're secure and you have that level of sense of security that when you operate in the cloud versus operating on your own data center, we needed to convince them that it is as secure and maybe even more secure. And then, of course, resiliency and availability. So once we addressed those criteria or those challenges, that was the inflection point, or that was the tipping point for industries and enterprise IT workloads to move into the cloud. So with the cloud, the benefits you get are, you no longer need to worry about purchasing high CapEx IT infrastructure. You have unlimited, supposedly, infrastructure available. You have unlimited scaling. And more importantly, you only pay for what you use. Unlike your data center, if you have servers that you bought and they're powered up, whether you use it or not, they are consuming electricity, they are consuming space, and imagine having a data center in downtown Manhattan. That is very, very expensive. So those are some of the criteria that we use to convince the enterprise IT world to transition to the cloud. And once you do that, it also opens up other opportunities where it's no longer just, cloud is no longer just a data center hosted by Amazon, right? We have enabled so many services that simplifies application development and also management of the infrastructure for the enterprise. So those are some of the things that helped us make that transition.
Thanks, AJ, and obviously you have been very successful in doing that, because a lot of these enterprises, they trust you with their infrastructure and they move these things over. So a lot of the industries, they always like to believe that their particular industry is so very special and so very different than all the other hurdles that have been already accomplished,
Yeah.
right? Can you maybe talk a little bit about how is your perspective on IoT? What can you do with your technology, with your capabilities in IoT world?
Right. So when it comes to the IoT business, from an Amazon perspective, we have an internal customer that has billions of connected objects inside our warehouses, our physical stores, and all the facilities that we operate. So when it comes to IoT, from an AWS perspective, we launched AWS IoT Core with the objective to manage these billions of devices that are connected inside our own warehouses and all the facilities that we manage, so all the sensors, all the connectivity. In addition to that, we also have Amazon devices where you have our entire fleet of trucks, delivery vehicles that we operate, also devices such as Ring and other devices like Eero and all, which also have mobile connectivity. So all of these devices and our source, that gave us an opportunity to build something that can be launched at scale, that is reliable, and something that can be very, very secure. And that is the experience that we bring to the IoT business when it comes to AWS IoT Core and the services that we create for that.
Well, I love the fact that you are doing this actually with your sister companies already, right? We sometimes internally speak about not eat your own dog food, but drink your own champagne, and you are exactly doing that.
Absolutely.
And because, right, if you do not do this right, you will get a lot of internal phone calls, I would assume. Right?
Yep.
Very good. No, I mean, that's great. And so just yesterday, we also announced that we are strengthening our collaboration, our partnership in that particular field. So very excited about going down this path and then leveraging the capabilities that you have also then to bring further benefits to the eSIM and IoT world in general.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd love to ask you the question back to you. So first of all, thank you for being our customer. But perhaps you can share, how does G+D view AWS and our partnership and the cloud when it comes to eSIM for IoT?
I'm sure lots of the benefits that you mentioned, they also apply to us. IoT in this sense is not so very special. We need the scalability. If we are talking about the growth projections that everybody is expecting to see, then of course we need to have that scalability. We also need the kind of elasticity because the demand is not uniform, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes we see a lot of peaks and we also need to have that kind of flexibility to say, in this particular time frame, in that particular market, we just need more capacity, we need more bandwidth, we need the systems to be ready to handle the load that we are seeing out of that one. And there's another factor that I think is also very important, and that is the fact that we need to oblige with the very different regulations, right? And some of our customers, they are rightly asking for redundant solutions. They are asking also then, how can you make sure that we have a setup that is not just reliant on one data center in a particular region? And for this case, you have already the infrastructure in place. And we can leverage that infrastructure to make sure we have the geo-redundant solution at the highest availability that we rightly expect.
Right. No, that's a great point, Philip. And we have common customers such as the telcos we've worked with, not only moving their IT workloads to the cloud, but also looking at, it started with IT workloads, but then we moved on to their operational workloads and the OSS, BSS workloads. And more recently, we've done announcements where we've moved even the core network to the cloud. And now with G+D, we're looking at the endpoint devices, which will be using eSIM technology, and those will also be moving to the cloud. And that also brings up an important point, Philip. When we work with our customers and our partners, that also gives us an opportunity to innovate on your behalf. So we may not have some of the capabilities and technologies that you may need, but we will work backwards from your needs. And just like we've done with other industries, including the telcos, we will innovate jointly on your behalf to enable this technology for the world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think we have to wrap up. I hope this works. So, in summary, right, we believe there's great potential in to bringing together eSIM and the cloud technology that is already out there. It will be a further enabler and driver for IoT world. The technology is in place. We've heard about it. It's working. It's out there. It's proven and mature. The security, we are very confident that this is so at the highest standard, and there should be no hurdles whatsoever to deploy these solutions in your cloud or in a different means as well. And with that together, we will have different business models, more flexible business models to piggyback on the kind of eSIM and IoT technology that is deployed. And maybe one word just here on regulations, because we believe we need to have a very good balance between innovation and regulation. And if I may just quote one of the things we heard in one of the hyperscaler discussion that I really like, and that is the fact, some of your colleagues, they actually mentioned, well, if looking at the telco industry, if the hyperscalers were regulated just like the telco industry has always been regulated, that industry would never have taken off. So food for thought, let's make sure we have that in balance. We need regulation, we need good regulation that also enables the innovation. And altogether, we will see the potential.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Philip.